We are overtime with Tera Roberts. Dear Ms. Fantasy, right? Dear Ms. Fantasy doesn't miss. You like that?
I love it.
Okay.
We'll go with it.
Let's talk about the Seahawks. We like to talk about particular teams in these overtime segments. The Seahawks are interesting. Third round is a very tricky round for wide receivers with Olave getting juiced up into the second round. Everyone's thirsting for receiver talent. And there's now you have Ridley going in the early second round. Calvin Ridley no longer a third rounder. Who are you going to draft? And I'm looking right at DK Metcalf going, this is easy. DK Metcalf. This is easy. DK Metcalf. Why not DK Metcalf? Why not DK Metcalf?
Yeah.
I love the Seahawks. I mean, now we're seeing Tyler Lockett in the fifth, Tyler Lockett in the fourth even. He's skyrocketing up just based on the fact that Jackson Smith-Njigba's no lock to play week 1, week 2. We'll see when he comes back. What do you think of this whole Seattle offense?
We'll start with the receivers. I feel like the receivers are the easier group, just because at the very least, now granted, Tyler Lockett's ADP shooting up is less than ideal. Before that, the value, fantastic. He's never finished at the ADP he's being drafted at. So I understand the concern about JSN stepping in, talent earns targets, all of that good stuff, but it's still Tyler Lockett. The value that you were getting him at was just incredible. So, it was still someone, it's shooting up, but wish you can get him cheaper, but it's still someone who's perfectly fine to target. DK is one of those guys where you're drafting him, you're not getting top 5 upside. So to me, it just kind of depends on how you want to build your team and what you want him to be within your offense of the roster of your fantasy team. He's very stable. We did see a dip in touchdowns. We could see some positive regressions come in for him this year coming up. Targets are there for him. Receptions are there. It's just a very stable option. I don't think he's worthy of thinking that he's going to be a bust because we've got JSN coming in. He's still a bully within this offense. So the value that you're getting him at is fine. None of these wide receivers for Seattle at their ADPs ring any red flag for me. They're all guys that you can depend on, especially when you look at the consistency that Metcalf and Lockett have had. That's the real key there.
Yeah, it's incredible.
You can't ask for more.
I mean, Metcalf set a career high in targets last year and receptions, but these were more shallower targets than he had previously. This is actually a good thing, right? This is what helped to unlock Mike Williams and many other receivers. This is what we love to see. 3 straight seasons for Metcalf, over 1,600 air yards. That's a very rare feat. He's the 6th most athletic wide receiver in the player profiler database. So he's 6th out of 1,115 wide receivers. That's the real upside there. He also is going to have some positive touchdown progression this year where you're getting up 12, 10 touchdowns, and then he dropped down to 6. Back to double-digit touchdowns. I think the yards per reception bounces back a little bit with a little more yak. He's going to be right back into that 1,200 plus yards, 10 plus touchdowns, 15 plus fantasy points per game. This is what I'm looking for. I'm just trying to get stable production from my first 3 receivers, especially if I'm going 0 RB. Just set it and forget it with my 3-pack of receivers. Or if I'm going hero RB and I'm drafting, say, Austin Eckler or Saquon Barkley in round 1, then I really want to make sure I'm getting Metcalf because I want to lock in that top 20 production. If I'm going, say, even Olave in the second round and then Metcalf in the third round, that to me is very juicy. And it's also interesting that Seattle plays Pittsburgh in the fantasy Super Bowl in week 17. There's going to be a lot of points scored in that game. I think this is going to be a bunch of fantasy champions that were overweight on Steelers and were very, sort of overweight on Kenny Pickett, Pickens, Freiermuth, everyone but Najee Harris pretty much in Pittsburgh were overweight on. And overweight on most players in Seattle, even Jackson Smith-Njigba, because he's unlikely to miss 5 games through the bye week.
Yeah.
That was the prediction early that just made sense. Like, okay, he's got a broken bone in his wrist. He's a very valuable rookie. They've got an early bye week. This is just the prudent thing to do. But then they release all these videos of him catching passes, and they don't IR him. They don't pup him. It's like, okay, wait a second. I think he's going to play. I think he's going to play before the bye. So now he becomes a value. He becomes a guy that you can buy the dip on. So that receiving core is interesting in that you're going to buy high and buy low. You want everybody. And then necessarily, doesn't that also mean you want Geno Smith?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I was just talking about this the other day. Dak Prescott is the guy who is kind of going in no man's land, where the production that you can get out of him is no different than a guy like Geno. There's plenty of quarterbacks that are going after Dak that can kind of give you that same low-end QB1, that just barely top 10 quarterback upside. And Geno's one of those people. So yeah, at the ADP as well. Yeah, that's a direction I don't mind leaning.
Yeah, you got, I think there's discount Prescott in Geno Smith, and there's super discount Prescott in Kenneth Pickett Sr. This is not another Steelers show. We're focused on the Seahawks, okay? We're focused on the Seahawks. With target conservation, Noah Fant's not dead yet, is he, or is he?
Yes and no. I mean, I say no because when you look at late tight ends, this is oddly a year where there are so many realistic options late that can get you to a low end tight end one, to where I don't think that taking the risk on a Noah Fant, who, will be the fourth look in terms of targets, hopefully. I don't see where we need to lean that direction when you can get good value on now granted, the ADPs are a lot different, but you can get good value on guys that are going in that 18 to we'll say 26, take it out there. You can get a Jake Ferguson, a Luke Musgrave, a Sam Laporta, has dipped a little bit as well. So there are guys that you can get that have realistically more upside to slip into more target share within their offense.
In the 2019 class, Noah Fant was the most athletic tight end of all. He's comparable to George Kittle and other elite super athletic tight ends. He's only 25 years old. He was banged up last year. He was a dominant college tight end, even while sharing a field with TJ Hawkinson. He's 25 years old. We see a lot of tight ends, from Greg Olsen to Martellus Bennett. There's just been a lot of tight ends that have not broken out until their second team, sometimes their second year with their second team. So Noah Fant is one of my truthers. He is not dead yet. This is the right offense. I mean, they get to face Arizona twice a year. They get to face the Rams twice a year. So it's one of the most pass-friendly schedules. Even the 49ers, they wall off the run. They gave up the second fewest rushing yards of any defense last year. The Titans gave up the fewest. So the Seahawks, when they play the 49ers, they're going to have to throw. This is all good news for Noah Fant. So this is an actual late round, super late round tight end that you can pick up and you can play. It's just, do you have a better option? Probably. Freiermuth, Evan Ingram, Dallas Goedert, those I would consider my firewall tight ends. And then after them, if I'm going late round tight end, I want athleticism and I want an up-tempo, high-volume offense. I want a Gerald Everett or I want a Noah Fant.
Yeah.
What about the running game? You have Kenneth Walker is going to be playing week 1. He took the entire month of August off to rest the groin. I think he's going to be back. I think he's a machine, right? This guy won all the awards, right? He won the Walker Award in college, the Doak Walker, right? He was the best running back in college, not Breece Hall. And yet Breece Hall was a third-round pick, for many, many weeks until he had the setback called Dalvin Cook. during training camp and preseason. So that was a problem. And knee soreness. So you have knee soreness and Dalvin Cook. And meanwhile, Kenneth Walker is dealing with more competition for touches in the backfield. I would contend that they drafted Zach Charbonnet because they knew they needed a running back, and the Seahawks are like a few teams in the league that just don't really discount the running back position. They just drafted Walker in the second round. They've shown that they will invest heavily in the running back position if they see a need at running back. They had no one behind Walker last year. It was a problem for Walker. My perception is that this is more of a straightforward backfield with Walker on top. Other people believe it's a little more muddled. What do you think?
I believe that Pete Carroll is evil in the fact that we can't get remotely any kind of actual tip off from his mouth verbally, like where I can piece together how an offense is going to look from listening to Doug Peterson, how that backfield is going to look and what he wants to do. I can't do that with Pete Carroll because Pete Carroll's not going to give us that information. There's so many different directions that it could go. As you mentioned, that we could be worried over nothing. This could just still be Kenneth Walker's backfield. And they just drafted Zach Charbonnet because he was the top guy on their draft board. And it looked like they were continuously drafting whoever was at the top of their draft board. So that could be the situation. We could see Charbonnet get more third down work because he has the better receiving profile, more proven history in college on that. And then there's people that believe that he'll take over early down work as well. That one gets a little, shaky for me, saying he's going to take the early down work, the third down work, the goal line touches. Okay, so you just think he's going to take over this backfield, period.
That would be unprecedented for a guy to put up this number of breakaway runs and be a workhorse and exceed all expectations as a receiver. After being drafted in the second round, age 22, for him to be replaced in a significant way. I can't remember the last time that's happened.
Yeah. I don't see it being a full replacement. I will say that the good thing about Zach Charbonnet, and while if I'm picking between the two, I am targeting Charbonnet more just because his ADP didn't rise to the point where we kind of thought it would. There was a point at which the hype was so extreme where there was no way that I was taking him, right? Because it was just, why? But now he's falling, behind Brian Robinson, Samaje Perine. He's getting in a good range where you look at him and you're saying, I don't have to, this is a guy I'm just stashing on my bench. I'm not looking for him to be in my starting lineup now anytime soon. This is just a situation where if he can earn his way into getting, a split backfield or injury happens to Walker and he gets this full third down or 3 down role, that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at him as a handcuff option who, if he gets the opportunity, is straight up a 3 down back that will do the exact same thing, but possibly a little bit more than what we saw from Kenneth Walker last year when he took over as the 3 down back. Because remember, Rashad Penny started off as the back. So this could be the same situation where Kenneth Walker starts off as the back until something happens. So it's just, it's not my favorite backfield to invest in. And I lean towards avoiding that area where Kenneth Walker is in right there. And I'm just kind of like, a pass right there. That's a good range for me to get something else, right? That's a good range
quarterback.
For me. If I want to go quarterback early, I'm going to go with a strong quarterback there other than taking the risk of Kenneth Walker when I can just take a risk a little bit later. So that's the only reason. It's not I roster Kenneth Walker in Dynasty. I didn't panic. I didn't sell him. I'm still holding on strong, but, Charbonnet is the one where I think I'm getting the value there and just seeing what will happen because I don't have to invest a lot in him.
The danger is that Charbonnet is not measurably better than DJ Dallas as a rookie. Now, I'm sure in his second year, Charbonnet will be, but most running backs, including Jonathan Taylor, struggled mightily through the first 12 weeks of his rookie year. So we will see how Charbonnet adjusted the league. As of now, I think it's unclear how the touches behind Walker are going to be divided between Dallas and Charbonnet. And if Walker would have missed time, I think there would be a split specialist backfield between Dallas and Charbonnet. And what might happen is Charbonnet just stays in a pass catching role, and actually Dallas gets more carries. That's very possible, which means that Charbonnet isn't the straightforward handcuff that some want him to be, right? There's a handful of actually, you could argue Rico Dowdle in Dallas is a more straightforward one-for-one handcuff for Tony Pollard than Zach Charbonnet is for Kenneth Walker. So in that particular scenario, I would just draft a different position. When the choices are Brian Robinson or Zach Charbonnet, I'm just going to go Brandon Cooks. I'm going to go Elijah Moore. I'm going to go Marvin Mims even. So that's going to be how I would play that. And
it's a good area to reach.
Yeah, it's what I think is going to happen. And also there is a talent disparity between Walker and Charbonnet in the running game that I think is extreme. We're a true home run hitter with tackle breaking ability and size. That's just so rare. That's like a Nick Chubb level explosive between the tackles running back with even more home run hitting ability than Nick Chubb. It's almost like you took Nick Chubb and then you added a little Tevin Coleman, but in a good way. A little slasher, like a little more slasher version of Nick Chubb. Certainly not the tackle breaker that Nick Chubb is, not quite the efficiency monster without the breakaway runs that Nick Chubb is, but again, more of the slasher archetype. I'm excited to see what Kenneth Walker does. I think he's a dynasty buy. I think that now I think you holding on is the right move to kind of hold on and just and hope for the best in dynasty. And in week 1, if he's healthy and they show out in week 1, I mean, let's look at the schedule. Who do the Seahawks play week 1? Oh, one of the worst defenses in the league at home. So we could be looking at 200 yards for Kenneth Walker in week 1, and then for the rest of the year, it's like Zach Charbonnet, who?
Mm-hmm. That is true. It could happen.